Hey guys, welcome to Happy Homelands. Yes, I've resurrected this program. It started years ago with a my co-host in Finland, Tina Vik, and she was great. Sadly, she passed away last year. Then as Styx was a co-host, I had Sasha, had Styx on last week, and now I have the lovely Courtney from Alabama. How you doing, Courtney?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine, and you're from the South. Why don't you give a little background about yourself, what you can say?
Okay. Um yeah, I am very proud. I mean, I guess this is rare these days. It might be kind of silly in a way. It might seem kind of legalistic because you don't really hear anybody talk or hardly anybody talk this way anymore, but I am very proud to say that I just have roots going back very far in Alabama, and I'm just so I've always been very proud to be from the state, and I joined the movement, I guess around 2004, and I've gone to several American Renaissance conferences, and that's where I've met Ramsey Paul in person. And
Yeah, that's where we met. I think I met you how many times there? Twice or 3 times? I can't remember. Maybe 3
Oh
times.
man, I think every time you spoke there we met, and then like I think half the times, at least half of those meetings, we were at the same table for the banquet.
Yeah, that was a
So
lot of that was a lot of fun, and if you guys wanna know what, Courtney looked like, there I do. I have a photo of her up there, as you can see. I think that's you, isn't it?
oh, that's sweet. I mean, I am, yeah, long blonde hair. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah. So yeah, so that's what you got of her. But I am so happy to have her on, and she's been in the conservative politics for a while. You call into the James Edwards show. He's a friend of mine. I've been on his show, and you give a good Southern perspective, and that is great to have you here. So
thank
welcome
you.
so much. And I have to ask you, did you have a nice Valentine's Day?
I did, and that's actually a great thing to talk about because, and I'm not just saying this to appease the audience or anything. I'm really being sincere. I don't, I've never made an issue about, like, pressuring boyfriends or my husband to, really do anything for me. I mean, it's like that. I feel like a couple should show love to each other every day of the year. And so for Valentine's Day, I don't make a huge issue about it. We really, in our house, we really do it for the kids. We
Right.
we we give them goodies in the morning, and it's so exciting. And I decorate the house for them, and it's really all about them. And and I'll make my husband a dinner, and stuff like that. But I don't demand anything or expect it. I mean, I'm being sincere when I say that. It's just not. I don't know. It's just not a big deal to me.
Well,
So
yeah, that is good. That is a holiday that got kind of out of control, it seems like, where all the demands and everything. And I just exchange stuff. I don't go overboard, never have. And I think it's better that way. I mean, if you have to go all out on Valentine's Day, you probably have an issue. You probably have an issue. So,
right,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, well, welcome here. Let's just get into it, and I'll get your and guys, we do the show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. And I have a regular show Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 11 a.m. Central. And I know Courtney's called in a couple times on that, or sent a super chat. So check me out. I'll be on tomorrow. And if you guys want to interact with the show, YouTube has super chats, Rumble has rants, and there's power chats here. I appreciate, and Stream Elements has a chat feature. So check that out. It's a lot of fun. And I encourage you guys to join my Gumroad. We had a book review, interviewed the author just last weekend. It was a lot of fun, or 2 weekends ago. So a lot of stuff going on. And we'll just get into this, the kind of some of the news items and the kind of your perspective here, Courtney. The first one, did you hear the news? They're saying that they had a special national security threat concerning the quote, highly concerning and destabilizing Russian capability. And supposedly it's something to do with a space threat or something like that? Have you heard anything about that? Or I'm a little skeptical. They're dropping this now with this whole Ukraine thing, trying to get funding, and I just don't know how really real this is. My guess is something that the Russians put up a device maybe to take out satellites. And again, this is ABC News. Sources, it's not confirmed, but said with deliberations on Capitol Hill, said intelligence has to do with Russians wanting to put a nuclear weapon into space. This is not to drop a nuclear weapon onto Earth, but to use against satellites. But you don't need to use a nuclear weapon against satellites. So, anyway, what's your take on this? You think they're just trying to hype this up, or is this a real threat? Are you scared of the Russians, Courtney? Is this higher in your priority list down in Alabama?
Oh, and once again, I promise I'm not trying to appease the audience, but I'm kind of like Sasha. I'm such a woman when it comes to the topic of war. I don't, it's funny, and I'm sorry the audience is going to hate me when I say this, but
No,
when
that's okay. That's okay.
when Bush was president, I've come a long way, and you might have been the same way before too, Paul, but like
Mhm.
I've come a long way. Like when Bush was president, I was so gung ho, like everything the Republicans did was wonderful, go USA, USA, I was one of those types,
Yeah,
uh,
I
uh,
was too before
and
the Iraq War. I really was, especially the first one. I think it was. I was like all in the '90s. Was that
yeah.
Desert Storm? Yeah, everyone had their flags, and I'm like, yeah, I kicked their ass. I think that's when Saddam invaded Kuwait. That was the big thing. But then after 9/11, all of a sudden everyone got all excited to invade Iraq, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, Iraq didn't have anything to do with this. And they're like, oh, but they have weapons of mass destruction. We can't wait. And I'm like, really? And then it got everyone all excited, and it ended up in a disaster. We're still having all the terrorism refugees. So
Right.
I've been in that space too. I kind of evolved. I probably would have been considered a neocon
Yeah, me
back
too.
in the '90s. Well, and you're from the South, so people that, and I'm a recent transplant here, but especially in the South, there is such uh, a, a, a Christian Zionism is just so
Mhm.
big down here. I don't know if it is where you are, where people think Israel is, they're God's chosen people and prophecy, and we must always support Israel. Do you see a lot of that where you are?
Yes, unfortunately, my unfortunately my parents are still those types of people. Oh my gosh, it's I have to, I do I used to be one of them, and what I was gonna say was, when I said, I'm such a woman about war, it's like I really don't, it just doesn't interest me anymore. I think a lot of it's just so, it's like, why are we over there? Why does it matter to us what these people are doing? Da 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 da. To like to answer your question, but yeah, to get back to like my parents and the Zionism and just how I used to be, it's just on one hand, I'm sorry, my daughter just came in the room.
Oh, well, tell her
Okay.
a hi. So
Hey,
yeah.
baby. She does this to me a lot when I'm on the political
Well,
cesspool.
that's okay. I got it. I got my dog I inherited in the other room, and she's barking right now. She looks out the window and sees deer and stuff. I'm in the wolf's lair. I'm in the mountains, so she like sees critters. So
Oh, but yeah, like, I do. It does irritate me. I mean, in fact, my brother's coming around on a lot of things, and he and I were debating my parents about Russia recently. And it's just, I really don't think, people their age, I really don't think they're going to get one over ever before their
oh,
death. I hate
right.
mentioning their death, but I just don't, something like that, like Southern Baptists, they're never going to be at their age. I don't think they're ever going to be won over on the Israel topic or anything, or why we shouldn't be over there or involved in any of this stuff. And but it's irritating. But another part of me kind of understands it as a Southerner because, and again, I'm not. Again, this might sound like I'm being, just like going back to what I said at the beginning about, yay, I'm just so proud to be from Alabama and my roots here and everything. But, it's true. I really do give a lot of the South a pass on this topic for being so pro America, because we are the most American part of the country. I mean,
Right.
historically we received the least amount of immigrants from Europe. Most of us are founding stock Americans, so I do sympathize and understand why people down here love America so much. Um, it's kind of
Right.
sad. It's sad because
Yeah.
it goes against them, but
It is interesting how that bled into this, and this whole Russian battle with Ukraine, and how we got in this proxy war against Russia has always seemed very strange to me because it's 6,000 miles away. I mean, do people in your neighborhood really care who controls the Donbass, as Kiev or Moscow? They don't here in Arkansas. It's very strange how we made this like our top priority, or our government did. And I see really a difference in the Republican Party between the older Republicans that are all for this, and more of the younger people don't seem to be on board with all these wars. So I think that's a positive sign.
yeah.
Uh, and so I'm not all excited about this supposed security risk, because I don't see Russia wanting to take over the world or attack the United States.
Right.
And a lot of this Ukraine thing is, I think, it's just a grift for money. It's one of the most corrupt nations in Europe, really, even before the war. So it's hard for me to get all excited about. They try to amp up the fear, and one of the things I've noticed that governments do in order to control people, they try to frighten you, and that
Right.
happened recently with something I can't talk about on YouTube. It's a medical event. I got more
Right.
strikes because of that stupid thing. But anyway, it's fear. So people are willing to give up their liberties, are willing to obey, and I think they're trying to use that with the Russian thing because it really doesn't impact most Americans.
Right, I agree, and I do notice I do know, even among Southerners, I do kinda notice that they're I don't know. Something seems different from like the Bush years where we were like, yeah, USA, USA. It seems like something has changed, like especially with the younger Southerners. Now, the baby boomers, I think they're a lost cause. I mean, they're like,
Yeah.
they really, the baby boomers down here, they really got ramped up, over like, the recent stuff in Israel and everything, and save Israel. And, I mean, I just don't think there's any winning them over. But the younger Southerners, I mean, we don't seem to be as interested in this stuff. Um, so that might be a good thing.
Yeah, I think that is, and did you see well, first of all, I got a power chat I want to get to, and this is a good one. It's kind of addressed to you, actually. It's
Oh,
from
okay.
Tony. Um, and Tony's asking, whenever someone asks, where do whites have a massive collective white identity? The answer comes from 80% of Alabama and Mississippi whites vote Republican. Is this the closest we get to groupthink of white identity? And I like this question by Tony, because you would think that Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, all those states, well, maybe Georgia will be soon, would be blue because they have a very high black population. But the
Hmm.
whites seem to be a lot more conservative in those states. And it's interesting when you get a all white area or mostly white area, let's say like Washington, I mean, like Seattle area, Portland, even Vermont, New Hampshire, they tend to be a lot more liberal. Whereas in the South, the whites seem to be a little bit more conservative and Republican. Is that
Yeah.
something you've noticed?
Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's definitely like even in the urban areas in Mississippi and Alabama, we're still we're still very conservative, and I mean, it's really just an issue of black and white down here. Like in Mississippi and Alabama, where we don't have very many transplants yet, but yeah, it's kind of sad because Vermont, the areas like Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, and then the Pacific Northwest, those areas are so beautiful. I
They
just hate
are
that
gorgeous. Yeah.
they have to why do the whites there have to be the way they are? I mean, I'm sure they're great in other ways, like I'm sure they're, and I've said this on the political cesspool, that Northerners have, I hate that. That sounds so silly, but New Englanders and then people in the Pacific Northwest, I mean, they have attributes that we don't have down here and vice versa. And one of their attributes is they take better care of their health and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But it's just on the topic of just being racially aware. It's just a shame. I mean, it's just such a beautiful area up there. It's I don't know. I hope they don't. I hope they don't let too many, of the wrong people in up there, and then I don't know.
Yeah,
But
well, that is it's funny they use the word prejudice, but really they're kind of prejudiced. They're prejudging. They just
mhm.
know what they see on TV in Hollywood. They don't live in this situation. But if you
Right.
live in this situation with different demographics, you realize the reality of it really quick. And so I think it's a little bit different if you're never around that. You tend
Mhm.
to believe what you see on TV. And it is amazing how many people that aren't from the South, they still think that Black people always have to walk around in fear in white areas and there's a KKK everywhere, just waiting to lynch them. I'm like, are you serious? I mean,
I
it's,
know.
but they really do have this image that was inspired by mostly Hollywood that is not true at all, but that's how they look at things. And then because they don't live around it for the most part, they don't really have that they don't have that understanding. It was sort of like the Nordic countries had that too. They were like pretty
Yeah.
much all white and they would lecture us about how our race relations. I'm like, well, they're starting to learn now, but it's coming in a little bit late. So
Right.
great. Yeah, great question there, Tony. I really do appreciate that. And one of the things I do kind of miss, and someone brought this up, and I want to just show it to you, everyone on here, real quick. Have you seen this clip by? Let's just a short clip from Tucker Carlson. Have you seen this one, Courtney?
I'm not sure
All right,
yet.
let's just play it real
One of the
quick.
ways you understand a society is through its infrastructure, the places where people gather, the places where they go to travel. If you've got a lot of people in one place, it tells you a lot about the people. So with that in mind, we're standing in front of the Kievskaya metro station, and there's a train station next to it. Now, the metro station was built by Joseph Stalin 70 years ago. And the question is, how's it doing now, after 70 years? So we went into it to take a look, and what we found shocked us. Now, that's not an endorsement of Stalin, who was bad, obviously, nor is it an endorsement of the current president, Vladimir Putin. You may not like him either. But it doesn't change the reality of what we saw, or more precisely, didn't see. There's no graffiti, there's no filth, there are no foul smells, there are no bums or drug addicts or rapists or people waiting to push you onto the train tracks and kill you. No, it's perfectly clean and orderly. And how do you explain that? We're not even going to guess.
I could guess. I could guess, Courtney. It's when I lived in Hungary and Budapest, it was like that too. It was funny. People would sit down and they would read books in the subway. It was really clean, real orderly. It's one of those things that I mean, I could tell you why because they don't have a certain diversity element that would enrich the subway there in Moscow. But it is really sad, and I think what Tucker said is when you go to public places and you see how run down they are in America, and it didn't used to be that way in America, but everything now looks so third worldish, and it's it kind of breaks my heart to see that as an American.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It's really it's embarrassing. Like, Jared Taylor, years ago, he had a podcast, or he wrote an article about how, he, for his job, he had to bring a bunch of Japanese businessmen over here,
Hmm.
and they had to go through one of the American cities. I don't remember which one it was, but the Japanese men were just looking out the windows of the taxi cab and they were just shocked, and if I were Jared Taylor, and I'm sure he felt this way, but if I was Jared Taylor, I would be very embarrassed. It's like, because you want, and as recently as the 90s, it's like most of the rest of the world thought of Americans as, all having blonde hair, like Beverly Hills
Yeah,
90210.
yeah.
and and they come over here and they've got I don't even know what's going through their head when they see this stuff, but I would have been very humiliated if I was him. I mean, I don't know, it's just it's so it's very sad. It's because again, I have roots that go back really far in this country as a southerner, and a part of me just might be a little selfish and a little too optimistic, and a part of me just really, I love our ancestors here. I love like the founding fathers, and then going all the way through that history to the Confederacy. There's so much about American history I just get so excited about. It's my blood, and I just don't want to let go of it. I'm just hoping something can turn around somehow. And I don't know. I don't know. Again, going back to what we were saying about Southerners, I don't know if that's a uniquely Southern thing. I don't know, but
Yeah, and it is really sad when you go to different cultures and they don't tolerate it. You don't have to tolerate crime. You don't have to tolerate filth. It seems like our people that rule us really hate us, and
mhm.
they want us to live like that. And it is pretty pathetic. Okay, let's take a
And
look at Tucker here.
That's not our job. We're only going to ask the question. And if your response is to shout at us slogans dumber than the slogans we used to call Soviet and mock, that's not really an answer. How does Russia, a country we're told is a gas station with nuclear weapons, have a subway station that normal people use to get to work and home every single day that's nicer than anything in our country? We're not going to speculate. We're just going
He can't speculate. He get in trouble.
to raise the question.
I know why. I know why, Courtney. It's because it's
Exactly.
run by Democrats. That's why, right? That's always the
Exactly.
which is funny because in the other question we had by Tony about the conservatives in the South voting always Republican, but Courtney, you're really young, so you may not remember this, but I know the old timers in the South, they would never vote Republican. They were pure Democrat because going back to the Civil War. I don't know if you remember that at all.
Oh, I definitely know about that. I wasn't
Yeah.
alive at the time, but I definitely know about that situation of the South switching parties. And it's just so silly how, Republicans love to bring up, oh, Andrew Jackson was a racist Democrat. And
Oh yeah, Jefferson Davis. Did you know he was a Democrat? I'm like, that was like 150 years ago, but okay. Whatever.
it's so stupid. The Democrats were something completely different than they are
Right.
now. It's a pointless argument. And I said this on the political cesspool. It's a pointless argument. It makes us look goofy on the right, and it's not going to win anybody over from the left. It's a goofy argument because I think even they know on the left, they know why it's a stupid argument.
Yeah, as I said, is because we have been trained, and I'm saying the right broadly, and I'm not saying any specific right. I'm taking it broadly, like Trump, the mainstream type of people, Elon Musk, even, the mainstream right. They really have this idea that in order they have to adopt the premise of the left, and they think it's a gotcha if they say the left, they're the real racist, or oh, look at this. Did you know the Ku Klux Klan, they were Democrats? Gotcha. They really think this is a very effective argument, but it's
Mhm.
stupid and it never works. And that is
It
true.
is.
All right, let's see what Tucker shows us
Question
here.
and wait for someone in charge to give us an answer. What is the answer? So we'll stop the lecture and let you take a look for yourself at what the Kievskaya metro station in Moscow, Russia looks like today, February 2024, in the middle of a war. Here it is.
That's really pretty, Courtney. I really miss the art that we used to have in our cities, and I think art
Mhm.
is very important. I saw this in Budapest. It was really weird because you saw the old communist buildings and they were so ugly, but then the older buildings prior to communism and even after, they built things very with like Gothic architecture. And I think art is a very important. We don't really have art. We just have gross stuff, and then we have all these like slogans about diversity and LGBTQ. It's just wearying on the soul. I don't know if you find that to be true too.
I agree, and it's something. It's one of the reasons I'm not really a fan. Well, there's a bunch of reasons I'm not a fan of what they call the New South.
Mhm.
And it's not really so much that I dislike transplants. I dislike some of them, bring their views here, but on the other hand, like when you have all these people from all over the country, even if they're all white, and they all come together and they in this and into the city and we have to build more and build and build and
Mhm.
build. And we have all these ugly strip malls everywhere, and it's like you lose your culture. Even when you mix a bunch of whites together that are from different cultures and
Oh,
backgrounds,
yeah. Yeah.
it's like we lose something. It's like strip malls everywhere and ugliness. And that's one of the reasons I despise like transplants coming here. It's not because I'm a mean person. I love people from all over the country. I love going and visiting them, and I admire white people from everywhere. But I mean, when we do this, like anywhere in the country, it's like we lose our local identities and our old architecture, and we replace it with this bland whiteness that's not it's like nobody really, there's no community among whites in this situation. There's no it's like we're hostile to each other in a way. It's really weird.
Yeah,
Like we don't.
it's sterile. It's not, we don't have a
Yeah.
connection to the community, and that's something, and I'm not throwing stones because 'cause I've been this way. I was born in Illinois,
Uh-huh.
raised in Colorado, moved to, Michigan and then Oklahoma and now Arkansas. By the way, I love Arkansas.
Yeah.
But, we don't have that sense of where your family is and you stay there and you have your roots, and I think that we lose something there. And I
Yeah.
think art is a very important thing, and beauty and keeping things clean. It's just not for hygiene. It's, I think, for our spirit, our soul. And as you can see here in the Moscow subway, they keep it clean and they have beautiful art. And I think that's important for a community. And you're right about how the cliches of the South have changed, because if you go into Fayetteville, Arkansas, where I live, you can see a lot of Confederate battle flags flying, but you go into Fayetteville, it's a liberal college town, you see a lot of the LGBTQ stuff. They had the BLM up. So, and this is a southern town. So
Mm.
it's not the stereotype people think. We also in the South have different enclaves of really now shit lives too. It's kind of sad, but it happens.
It is sad. It's happening. It's starting to happen in Alabama. You have people from, and I'm not just blaming outsiders, because I know we have our own problems, that are
Hmm.
native grown to our own, liberals. But there are a lot of people that come into our areas and do this to our cities. A lot of other, different types of white people, and Alabama's starting to get it too. In the northern part of the state, where we have the space center up there in Huntsville, it's attracting a lot of engineers. And I heard from a friend up there who's in real estate that, yeah, a lot of the people coming in are bringing their blue state views with them, and it really upsets me. It's like, not Alabama too.
Yeah, that's what's happening here in Northwest Arkansas, because
Right.
the word got out is a nice place to live. So they ruined their state and they're moving here. So let's just take a look at a little more of this. That's really pretty. That is really pretty there.
Yeah, it is.
Now in America, that'd all be defaced with graffiti and everything else. They probably don't tolerate that in Russia. So I'm not going to play it all, but yeah, if you
Yeah.
guys want to watch the video from Tucker, it is kind of inspiring. I did something similar when I was in Budapest. I took a photo and I contrasted it to a subway in France that was full of diversity and chaotic. It's really amazing how different people, how they behave in different ways. And I miss an orderly like subway where people are quiet and read and are considerate of others. And we don't have that in our urban areas of America anymore. They're really disgusting, our public transportation. And I don't think you can fix it. It's a demographic problem that you're just not going to fix by voting Republican or something like that. It's just ridiculous. That's just a reality of the situation. So that's the same reason if you go to Tokyo, and it's not even a white thing, right? Because if you go to Tokyo, there's hardly any whites, but the subways are very clean and orderly. So it's based on the people and
Yeah.
how they view their communities. And I think that's a key thing. So
Yeah.
I would love to go to Moscow sometime. You have to get a visa, but I heard it's really nice. Hey, I got a couple other I got from Tony. He said, an addendum to my last question, the left often says racism comes from not knowing people of color or ignorance. The truth is exposure to these groups is what makes white conservatives. Ignorance like Vermont brings liberal wokeness. There is there is something to this where if people don't live in this situation or they just have tokens, let's say if you're very wealthy, you live in a gated community that's almost like 95% white or Jewish, and you have your fabulous cocktail party, and I just have my dear black friend that's gay. He's so funny. If that's your experience with diversity, it's different than if you live in a neighborhood around all that. So I really do think that is a lot of truth in that. And I got a super chat, and I want to address this. This will be a good one actually for uh, Courtney. Sorry,
Oh,
Courtney. Almost called you Sasha. I keep getting my names
that's
mixed up.
okay. That's okay.
Men have been trying to change the culture by voting majority conservative for decades. What can convince women to stop voting majority left? Well, not all women do, and I don't know. Maybe Sasha will get upset at me saying this, but I don't think she would. Sasha says one of the things that really kind of pisses her off about this thing, and I don't know what you want to call it, but let's say call it conservatives or dissidents or whatever. I don't want to use words that are inflammatory, but you know what I mean. Is
Mhm.
this strain that came in recently that it's not just anti-feminism, which I've always been. I started out just making anti-feminism videos, but there is a strain, she said, that these people, some people, not all, really seem to hate women, and they think
Yeah.
women are just like the problem. And I'm talking, even white women, they will cheer if they're attacked. They just think women are the problem. I'm like, guys, something's really gone strange here. And so I wanted to bring that up too. Maybe you can address that. But he asked this question. It's the old, what can we do to get women to be more conservative? Because, and then also, what's your view of this whole, or have you observed it online? And do you think it's like astroturf or someone's
Yeah.
pushing this to divide us, or is this genuine?
Uh,
What's your view of this, the anti-women stuff you see?
I have a very easy answer to that. In fact, I talked about that on the political cesspool recently. And I don't want your audience to hate me, but
Well,
I'm just
I know. Yeah, I don't care. I just say what I love about my show. I just say the truth, what I think, and if
right.
people hate it, they hate it, whatever. So,
I'm just being honest. I don't understand what people are talking about in our movement. I don't understand what they're talking about when they say most white women are leftists. They're not.
yeah.
We have, and I talked about this on the political cesspool. We have more regional differences in how we vote as whites than we do sexual differences because
Hmm.
you can look in the 2020 election, and this is just an example of one red state, but in the 2020 election, 80% of white women in Alabama voted for Trump. Now, there's blue parts of the country like the Pacific Coast, the upper
Hmm.
Midwest, and the Northeast, where, yeah, you do have young, single, college educated, urban white women who are causing a voting gap up there. But I highly doubt that the white men in those regions voted for Trump nearly as high as 80%, like white women.
No, they don't.
And I don't and I'm not trying to be mean, but I don't understand what people are talking about when they say most white women are leftists. I don't see the evidence for it. I'm sorry, I don't. Yeah, there's more. There's more that are leftists than there are white men. That's true, but it's not most white women. I mean, I don't know if most white women have ever voted for Democrats. I mean, I don't know what people are talking about. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be mean about it, but um, I think I see a lot of regional differences mostly, to be honest. I mean, and there are white women who are causing a voting gap, but they are mostly, again, they're mostly on the Pacific Coast, the upper Midwest, the Northeast, and they tend to be in urban areas. And then the white men in those areas, they're not voting as far to the left as the women are, but they're not voting as Republican as, white men or women in the South are voting, or in any of the red states, like in the interior West. And so I don't know. I think we have more regional divisions.
Yeah, I think it's on the culture, and I've always said women like to maintain the culture, men kind of establish it. And in general, especially if a woman's not married, she's going to conform to whatever the culture is. And that's
Right.
why, and there's nothing wrong with it, but women are more, that's why fashion, for example, is targeted more towards women because they tend, not all women, but they tend to be more concerned about that than men. And so if your society is hardcore communist, the women are really in the general going to support it. If it's Nazism, we saw back in Germany, they were real supportive of it. So whatever the culture is, women tend to influence or try to keep it on that way. So I don't
Right.
really see this as an issue. I said that's not really the issue. It's not like the women are the problem. We got to change the culture. And the second part, do you find that irritating too, or have you seen this anti-women stuff and does it bother you?
Oh, that was the second part of his question.
Yeah, first was about the voting patterns. I think you addressed that saying you really don't think there's much of a disparity, except in regional differences. But how about the
Right.
others? And on the conservative sides, a lot of these people, I'm not going to say names because I don't want to do flame wars, but they're saying women are really the problem and they should be second class citizens. I think you've seen that all. How do you look at all that?
Well, I when I was in during the earlier years when I was in this movement, I didn't really approach that topic correctly, like because I was just so excited when I joined the movement. I was so excited over it, like, oh gosh, we have a place where we can just freely talk as white people. And but then I was so discouraged when because I loved, I don't do this anymore, but I loved getting involved in comment sections in the movement and stuff.
Mhm.
I stay far away from them now because a lot of that stuff would come up in the comment sections. And when I was younger, I used to get so upset over it, and I would debate people, and I don't want to be that person anymore. I just want to stay away from it and ignore it. I mean, I'm still exposed to it because I hear it come up on podcasts and stuff like that. But I think I don't know. I think that there's probably there's a lot of I do feel sorry for a lot of white men. I'm sure they've been through some bad situations, which causes them to feel the way. And so I'm trying to feel more sympathy now instead of because when I first joined the movement, I was shocked at the stuff. I'm like, wait, we're supposed to be a pro-white movement, but there's all these comments bashing 50% of white people all the time. And it didn't make sense to me just because I was so young. But now I understand it a little better. And I just try to, it's why I avoid comment sections now. I would just rather leave it alone. And so a part of me is sympathetic, but another part of me still doesn't really understand a lot of it, I guess.
Well,
But
in the comment sections, you're always gonna get too some people are genuine, but not everyone online is genuine when they're anonymous and they like to
right.
troll and, it's just how it is, and I
Right.
don't really look at the comments either much because of that reason, and so that's an issue. Ozark Funky Dance, thank you, that's a nice one. God bless you and Courtney on this Ash Wednesday. Oh, that's right, it's Ash Wednesday.
Yeah, thank you.
Courtney is delightful. Well, she is.
Oh,
Thanks for the stream tonight, tonight's conversation was on point. Well, thank you. I do appreciate your kind comments on that. So,
yeah.
and good positive feeling from feedback for Courtney. Um, let's see. I got a rant from Rumble. Rams and Courtney's view of Ben Shapiro's 1 minute video statement here. All right, I haven't seen it. Well, let's take a look at this, and we'll take a look at this here, and I'll give you my opinion here. I haven't even seen this, but well, so Ben Shapiro, I can guess what he's talking about. So let's see what Ben's talking about.
I want to talk about borders broadly in a minute, something that Michael and I have been talking about. But you said the Great Replacement, you said demographics. A part of it is that they're trying to change America from a predominantly white nation to a not predominantly white nation. Ben, you've taken a lot of flack online for commenting a couple times over the years that you don't give a damn about the browning of America. What do you mean by that?
I don't care about the race. I care about the ideology. I don't think they care about the race, by the way. I think they care about the ideology. If they could import 200 million liberals from Sweden, I think that they would do it.
But isn't the point that just it so happened? I'm not.
All right, I'm gonna stop here a little bit what he's talking about. So Ben's position, this is a CivNat, is that the Democrats are trying to bring in liberals. That's the issue. It's not a racial thing. And all I'd ask Ben is, would you have the same standard for Israel? Would you be okay as long as they weren't liberal, bringing in a bunch of Palestinians and Muslims into Israel? So it is let's say if they're good people, they're not terrorists. And if they eventually enough get into Israel where they can vote, then Israel would no longer be a Jewish state. Would you be okay with that, Ben? Why or why not? I don't know if they're going to follow up with that question. I doubt they will, but that's what I would ask on that. So are you surprised about Ben's? What are your thoughts on Ben's response there? I thought it was I predictable.
Yeah, he he's one of those where I do like to watch some of his stuff for certain things. Like he is good on some of the cultural war stuff.
Yeah,
like male female stuff, and I think he's on point on stuff like that. But yeah, stuff like this, I'm not expecting any better from him. That argument is so, I don't know. It's so ridiculous. I agree. I agree with everything. Go ahead.
No, his argument is that if they could bring in a bunch of blonde Swedes if they were liberal, but they're not. They don't. And
Right.
That's the thing, because they know that they could change easier. And it's fundamentally a misunderstanding what a nation's about. And as I brought up a lot in the show, the word nation comes from Latin natio, which means birth, like neonatal. So it means you're related to someone by extended birth. You mean you're kind of a similar blood, like even you and I are directly related, but in a sense we are. We come from the same region, so we kind of the same nation. Just like I always use the Cherokee Indians, you don't say, hey, I'm gonna put in my application to join your tribe. You can't do that. You got to be born into it, right? And the same with if you're Japanese, you got to be born. Jared Taylor's not Japanese, even though he was born in Japan, speaks Japanese. And I know Ben would say that too about his people, like you just can't. Well, they have some converse, but in general, you're born into it. You don't have to be religious. So it's sort of a disingenuous argument he's using here. And the point is, I don't really even care so much about liberal, conservative, whatever you mean by those terms, because those terms, I think, get really confused. Because it's funny because I'm older, but yeah, I'm not against. I'm pretty much mostly against all these wars. That used to be a liberal position. So am I liberal? I like the environment. I want to protect the environment. It's one of the reasons I want to restrict immigration. So, that should be a liberal position. So I don't really like these labels anymore. But I think we need regions and homelands, and it's not just racial based, because as you said, Germans are different than Italians. But with people, they have something in common that binds them together. That is the key thing. It's not so much your ideology, and that is what Ben is saying here, which I disagree with. So I would ask, if I was in this panel, I would ask him about Israel, and I would never be invited back to one of these easy chairs if they ever said that. But let's see what they say here.
Not saying it's good. I wish we could shift the whole black vote. I wish we could shift the whole Hispanic vote, but we just haven't. It just hasn't happened.
Well, I mean, but I don't see how that's relevant. In other words, the way that the left likes to slander the right when they talk about things like the Great Replacement theory is by suggesting that the reason that the right is opposed to mass migration from these countries is because they want fewer brown people. The point that I was making is we don't want mass migration from countries that don't share our values. I don't care whether they're brown, whether they're green, whether they're white. Like, it doesn't make a difference to me. If you come from a country where
I want to talk about.
Sorry.
I don't care whether they're brown, whether they're green, whether they're white. Like, it doesn't make a difference to me. If you come from a country where you are used to gigantic government services that take care of you, and you're coming here to be reliant on those government services, or you don't share American feelings about how family ought to work, or about how government ought to work, or about many of these values. I don't care if you're pulling those people from Latin America, whether you're pulling those people from like the most liberal parts of Europe, like that doesn't matter to me. The ideology of the people who are coming in matters to me. So when I say that,
All right. Yeah, he's talking ideology here, and this is it's interesting because most people are not that ideological. So the average person that floods into this country, they don't have some sophisticated ideology. And a couple of points on this. Number one point I've already addressed. He wouldn't have the standard for Israel. He wants you to be Jewish. He doesn't care if you're a good person or whatever. He would not want you into Israel because that's his homeland for his people. And my second part is the ideology, what he is trying to emphasize, at least not with his homeland in Israel, but the rest, our countries, is the blank slate theory that everyone is pretty much the same. So if you have someone from Sweden versus if you have, let's say, a cannibal from New Guinea, if the Swede is liberal, you'd rather have the base conservative cannibal from New Guinea and his brood of kids because they're going to be more being able to adapt to our culture. And I think that's ridiculous. I think culture and ideology comes from a people in general. And I know the environment has some influences too, so I'm not saying it's 100%, but I don't think people are replaceable widgets, that we're all the same. And that's the big difference. Whereas Ben, except for Israel, which he is very special to him, he thinks everyone's replaceable. So as long as you are what you call, in quotes, a good person, that's fine. So if you get these good Africans coming in, they're going to be good for this country, no matter if you have and their kids. Well, what about their kids and stuff? So I think that's the fundamental flaw he has here. What are your thoughts on this argument he's making here?
Right. I'm so sorry. Now I've been bombarded with both of my kids.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, that's happens sometimes.
Hold on one second. I apologize.
No worries. And so I would just tell the audience that's my take on that. So thank you. Who was that from? That was Rowhouse. Thank you for that. I do appreciate Rowhouse on that. So and let me just see if I have any other stuff here. So thank you, Rowhouse. And I think that's all the super chats and stuff. And let me just get into a few other things here. Let's see here. I did have something that was kind of interesting.
You don't play with this?
All right, here we go. Are you there, Courtney?
I'm here now. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I just want to get your input. There's a clip here that was kind of interesting. I want to give you this clip, see if you've heard this and your thoughts on this. It was a younger woman, and I'm kind of sympathetic a little bit, but let me just give this to you here. It started a big debate with like Matt Walsh and other people.
Why is it that I have to work 40 hours a week just so I can have a place to live? 40 hours a week makes me $2,000 a month, and my rent is $1,660. So I work 40 hours a week so I can have a 2-bedroom apartment and an extra $300 a month. Like, it doesn't cover my phone, internet, food, you know? So not only do I not have any extra money, but just working makes me so exhausted that I don't have time either. Like, I get off work at 5:30, come home, I'm just so tired. I'm so tired that, like, I need to do outside of work, I then just push off to like the weekend, and I'm like, I'm just tired to do this after work. I'll wait until Saturday. So then I end up with so much to do on the weekend that ends up having to be split into 2 days. So I have to do stuff on both Saturday and Sunday. So then I don't get a day off. I don't get a day to relax. I don't get to decompress. So it is really like working 7 days a week. constantly. No, I don't want to do that anymore, right? Like, I don't care how poor and miserable I would have to be, but I can't have a place to live without this, you know? Like, I don't know what to do. I'm not made for this. I don't have the money, time, or energy to enjoy my life outside of work, and I don't know what to do about it anymore, you know?
What are your thoughts about that? That kind of made a big debate online. I don't know if you saw that, but what's your opinion on that?
Well, there's two things. Hold on a second. I'm so sorry because I do want to say something about this. I'm sorry, Paul.
Oh,
Um,
that's okay.
because I really do want to say something about this. Yeah, two things.
Well, it's kind of funny because this is, I mean, like you're juggling this now. You have your kids, and I mean, this is a real thing people have to deal with, and it's tough. It really is. I get it. I kind of have a heart for women like this, and I don't know. Well, go ahead. Give me your thoughts.
It's like, first of all, I mean, gosh, with these younger generations, I mean, whether somebody's complaining about something like this or their relationships, and it's like young people need to get off social media. They're sharing way too much about
Yeah, it's true.
themselves. And it's like, you go to my parents' generation and they don't care about this stuff. They don't want to hear about it. It's like people don't want to I don't like hearing it. It's like, keep it to yourself, talk to your personal friends about it, stop ranting about everything about your life online. And then, the other thing is, yeah, it's just I mean, it's hard for a lot of us right now. I mean, it's just I don't know. I mean, 40 hours a week isn't that what most people do? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing, and I get it, but on the other hand, I remember my grandparents, how hard they had to work, and you didn't even know if they'd have food. There was no social programs, and I'm just thinking of people that founded our country. So I don't know, what she was expecting, but I do understand she's in like a spiral. She can't do anything, and that's what it is. When you work 40 hours a week, then you are tired at night. Then you have to do your weekend to do errands, and uh,
Right.
it does kind of suck. So. Uh,
Yeah. It,
yeah.
go ahead.
Well, one of the things that a lot of people like in our sphere would say is, "Oh, well, she should have been married and had kids." But I never understood that meme that if you're married and have kids, that means you're not, even if you don't officially work, I mean, you're working. I mean, there's a lot of work to maintaining a home and raising children.
Yeah.
And so so no matter what you do, you're going to have, I think, to keep busy doing something. That's just the nature of life.
Right, right. And it is a lot harder for our people right now. I think, unfortunately, I mean, it is a product of feminism, but it's also just the fact that so more people are more white people are having to work now, unfortunately. And it's just the society that we live in right now, bringing all these immigrants or taxes going up. And it's unfortunate that we have this situation. I don't know. I guess I kind of have mixed feelings on the video, kind of like you do. I guess it is sad in a way, but on the other hand, I mean, there was a time when you kept this stuff to yourself. You didn't go on social media and like tell millions of people about it, uh, and you're just opening yourself up for getting your feelings hurt because you're going to get negative feedback and
Yeah, well, she probably got a big check for this video because it went viral, so she's doing okay. But
that's
it is kind of interesting because I didn't even think of that aspect of it. Would we be as sympathetic towards her? I mean, she's a young, fairly attractive white woman, blonde. If she was like a guy, I don't think people have the same sympathy. And I don't
right.
know if that's wrong or right, but that's just the fact. If a guy was on there crying that, oh, I have to work 40 hours a week and I'm tired at night and I have to do errands in the weekend, people, I don't think there'd be much sympathy, but I think there's a natural, at least with men. I think women don't really have this towards other women as much. They see through that a little bit. I've
Mhm.
even noticed that with Sasha. She sees through that. She doesn't really fall for a lot of this, but the guys are like, oh, poor little girl, she has to work. I don't think this act would work with someone, let's say, was older, if they were a guy. I don't know. There is a little bit of privilege there. I think she's trying to use for her situation there.
Right.
And
And
another topic I want to ask you, and you can talk more about this too, because it comes up a lot, is I have to be honest, this is another topic that gets me kind of crazy a little bit, is um, the whole baby issue. And I think that's a real personal matter, how many children a woman wants to have.
Mhm.
And I think people need to be respectful for that to individuals, because trying to pressure someone you don't even know, that why aren't you having babies? Well, maybe they can't, and there's a lot of issues there that that used to just be the mother-in-law would do, when you got married, not strangers. But now there's this whole push on women, at least in the traditional, our side of the sphere. Oh, we got to have more babies. But it's not just like in our spheres. The reproductiveness is going down in Japan and other places. What's your thought on why are people not are having fewer children now than they did in the past?
well, the fact, and you mentioned this before, the fact that we're seeing it all around the developed world,
Yes. Hmm.
even East Asian
Yeah.
countries where like feminism wasn't even really popular. It might be now.
Right.
I really don't know, but I guess kind of like what you said. I guess a lot of it is a product of unfortunately, it's just modernization, and like what you were saying before, and I'm sure. I'm sure the sexual revolution has something to do with it, but then also like what just the fact that we're seeing it all around the world. And modernization, as you pointed out, and then also just I don't know. It's just such a thing. I don't like using this as an excuse, but it's just so things are different now. We're letting all these people into our country. We're
Hmm.
having to compete with them. And I'm not saying we should use that as an excuse not to have kids, but there are things that are different now and more difficult. And I guess it's just a bunch of factors. It's really sad. I don't know. I don't know. It is interesting. It does kind of change, it kind of changes our outlook on it when we see that it is places like Japan also, and Korea and China, and it's basically everywhere except Africa, I think.
Yes, and there tends to be a correlation. The more prosperous people become, they
Yeah.
have fewer children. And you would think it'd be the opposite, because if you get prosperous, you have more money and everything. But there's also a little bit. Well, did you ever see that movie Idiocracy?
Yes. Am I?
Yeah, if you remember the opening scene, it was a classic, and that is really true. You had kind of the wealthy yuppie couple. Oh, we can't have a child now, but the stock market's not right, not in this environment. Then you had the white trash guy, he doesn't really care, just gets these women knocked up. There's some truth to that. It's like I think people, they get in, if because you don't want to bring a child into the world unless you can take care of it. And so I think that's an aspect too. And if people are not optimistic about our future or the future of your children, I don't think they will have as many children. But there's also a point of why should you have more children? Because as a woman, it kind of, there's some negatives to it, aren't there? I mean, because they take a lot of time. It's hard on your body, and I don't know. I mean, I know you have children, but I mean, can you see why some women don't want it? Because they're like, well, you know, that could just hold me down. I'd like to be able to, at the moment's notice, go to with my boyfriend to Europe or something.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I unfortunately, it's just it's the culture now, and I do see it like in that lens. I mean, I'm not saying it's entirely the right way to be, but yeah, from that lens, like just knowing what our culture is now and what it promotes, and getting married later and enjoying life, for both
Yeah.
sides. both sexes,
Right.
want to enjoy life more. I do see it from that perspective. How I do see how like a young woman, she might worry about losing her figure and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's entirely okay, but I do see like in the context of our current culture and everything. And yeah, it's real interesting. I guess I think there's a lot of factors going on.
It might be that also women in employment doesn't. I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing it, but my mother, she had me when she was 20 years old, and that would seem by today that was in 1963, but by today's standards, that would seem super young. And back then, that's what they did. And now I think a lot of women, I'm not saying this is necessarily wrong, but there's a push, you got to go to college, otherwise you're a loser. So the majority of people in university now are not men, they're women. So they get their degrees. A lot of times they're worthless, but they get a degree. And then, so you get out of college, you're what, 21. You probably don't want to start having kids right away because you're just starting your career. So it's like, well, I'll have my career, start that. And by the time in their mental clock, when they're going to get married and have children, they're already in their 30s, which makes it a little more difficult sometimes to have children, or you're not going to have as many. Do you think there may be something to that too? It's just a lot of women now. They go through that path of college, getting into a corporate job. They don't want to have a child right away because they're just started, and you don't want to. You just want to focus on your work.
Right. It's sad. Like with my generation, I'm the generation where our parents were the baby boomers, and don't worry.
Just I'm not going to ask your age, but are you a millennial, or I never asked that, or Gen X, or you're older than a Gen Z, right? So
I'm the same. I'll put it this way. When you get to these younger generations, I kind of lose track of where the cutoffs are. I really
yeah.
do. It's like I know the baby boomers, I know the silent generation, but when you get to mine, it's like what? It's like where are the cutoffs? I'll put it this way: I'm the same generation as James Edwards and Richard
Okay.
and all those. Well, that's a weird combination to spout out, but but that line of the like
Right.
but anyways, yeah, like my generation, our parents are baby boomers, and the baby boomers are the richest generation that has ever lived. And
Hmm.
they, and I think this was also a product of feminism, but it's like, combined with just how that generation was so successful, combined with feminism and it kind of infiltrated our entire culture. And where women can go to college and work just like men do, and these baby boomer parents, they had so much money, and it was such a trend to like send all their kids to college. And I do think I do think there's a small percentage of jobs that women are suited for, like nursing and or yeah, being a teacher. I mean, because you go way back, and I know you've discussed those professions on your show, but you go way back, and there was always a small percentage of jobs that women did, but they were female specific. Whereas most of the jobs are male specific, and women shouldn't be doing them. But anyways, back to my point, yeah, like most of these degrees and everything, like women, it is an issue that all these women, suddenly ended up going to college all of a sudden with the rich baby boomer parents sent them. And I do think it wasn't really a good thing. Most of these degrees they got, they're either worthless or they're going into professions that are too stressful for them as women, and they're not really equipped as women to have these jobs. And then later they decide they want to have kids, and and it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad because your father put all this money into your degree, and he, they wanted to send you to college, and then so you start your career, and then you don't want to waste your parents' money, but then you're wanting to have kids. I mean, it's kind of sad. It's not good for anybody. And then all these positions in colleges that males could have had instead. So it's not really,
Yeah.
it's
And
not a good.
I know a young girl in Canada. She actually went to a mutual conference of ours. Yeah, you might have. I don't know, ran into her, but she was real young. She's a doctor, a medical doctor,
Mm.
and she said the problem with, because their majority women are doctors now, because they discriminate against men in medical schools, but they're having a big problem because a lot of women, they put all the money, the state does, and they're borrowing. They get their degrees and they become a doctor, and then after 5 or 6 years, they quit. And they're done and they don't do it anymore. And so they have a huge doctor shortage because they just get burned out with it. They want to get married or whatever. So that's an issue they're running into too in that. So, but I don't know how you would like have a medical career, be a doctor, and then also be able to stay home and raise your kids. See, I just don't know how you do that. There's just some realities there. And I think that's one of the reasons that the birth rates are going down. And I have to be honest, I'm not one of these people that says everyone needs a ton of kids, because I think we got a lot of people, and I don't like this. We need to get into a breeding competition with like Africa. I think that's stupid. We just need our own areas, and we need a healthy replacement. But I'm not one perpetual growth. I don't think that's healthy either. So that's
Yeah,
kind of my take.
I agree. And I'm not a eugenicist or anything, or I don't know if I'm using the right
Mhm.
term there. You know what I mean? But I mean, I'm not into like exterminations of people or anything like that. But I am about quality is more important than quantity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, instead of just popping out all the kids.
Right.
And Robert had another question. Robert had a $3 question. It is sad to see that people had kids more when they had less options. When they had other options, they just chose not to. Richer countries, birth control, less farming families. That's what we're talking about, Robert. I think there's not one issue, because I think also people were more religious back then and they saw it as a blessing from God. The birth control, I don't know. I didn't live back there. I'm not sure how they did birth control. Maybe they didn't. Maybe that's the reason. Do you think that's the reason, Courtney? I wouldn't think it is, but is it?
Birth control causing the lower birth rates.
Yes.
Um,
I mean, the people had big families back then, because I think they wouldn't have had to, but I don't know.
I think it played. I think it possibly played a part.
Yeah.
Because back then it's like you're a married couple and you're doing your thing. It's more likely to have kids, I guess. I do think that and again, it's just a complicated topic. Like a lot of people in our circles act like it's black and white, like it's only
It
for
isn't. Yeah. Yeah.
and there's so many factors involved, as to why we're where we're at now. And I do think that's one of them. Um, so, and that's why I don't like these male female wars, going in
I
either.
don't either. I can't stand it. And I think people that do that are really, I think I'm going to put my conspiracy Alex Jones hat on. I think some people are bad actors and they just want to divide and conquer. And to a lesser degree, they do that with the generation war too. I mean, who doesn't like to make fun of boomers? And I joke about it. Oh, boomer tech or whatever. But it's just tongue in cheek. It's not like I hate older people or younger people. And it seems Z-Man brought it up. It's only targeted to white people. You see that. I don't see that with any other racial group where they target different generations as like the enemy.
Right, right. I agree. I fully agree. I've never gotten into this like these generational wars. I mean, I think that's so stupid. I don't. I mean, like I do understand some of the criticism of boomers. Like I was talking about my parents earlier and how they're never going to be won over on the
Right. Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's more racially conscious people in their generation than my generation. So.
Yeah, it's a trade-off, and there does, and I kind of get it. I mean, you get to a point in your life you don't want to learn a lot more or whatever. Like my dad before he passed away. I mean, he got on the internet, but he liked to go LouRockwell.com, and he wouldn't read it online. He would just print it all off because he didn't like to read on a computer. And I'm like, I kind of understand that. So,
Right.
and he still got the Denver Post newspaper. I'm like, people still get. I want to go to his house. I'm like, people still get a real paper. You have a paper boy still, boy. This is like going back to the '80s or something. This is weird.
Yeah.
You did though. So yeah. Cringe Panda, $10. Thank you, Cringe. Rams, good point. I get the comment. You need to get married and have many white babies as you can in every video. I'm in high school. Yes, Cringe. You're a little Cringe, you shouldn't have babies until you get out of high school and stuff. Some of our guys alienate white girls. Good night. I think some of it's intentional, and I don't think it's a. I'm not one. First of all, I think how many children you have, I think is a very personal subject, and it's not for me to, with any specific person, to say you should have more children or you have too many or fewer. I just think that's rude. I mean, people years ago would have never said something like that. That was just considered taboo. You want to talk about someone like, why don't you have more kids? So I think that's just a rude thing to do with anyone. And I would never tell a woman she needs more kids, because my grandmother that had my father, she only had one kid, and because she was told that she would never ever be able to have children, but they happened with my dad, but she never had any other kids. So, she didn't need a lecture why she wasn't having more kids by strangers. So I think we got to have compassion there. And some people just aren't really made, I think, to have children. I think people have different roles in life, and it's not maybe for everyone. And I don't. I don't know. I just think this obsession with it can be a little bit harmful. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Especially, yeah, Cringe. If you're in high school, you shouldn't be thinking about that sort of thing. Would you
Right.
agree?
Yeah, I've gone to a lot of conferences. I've gone to American Renaissance
Mhm.
conferences. I've gone to James Edwards's events.
Mhm.
A lot of different things, and I have to say, and it's not just, I'm sure a lot of people have this image of these old men, coming up to young women and saying, why don't you have more kids? But, there's actually a lot of older women that do that at these conferences, like a lot of busybody women.
Yeah.
And it's like they want to reclaim their role. And, I understand this to a degree, because we do need to go back to this. But, years and years and years ago, these older women in the villages, they had to be busybodies. They had to, lead the young women in the right direction, pull on their ears. And, but now it's just like, when I go to a conference, I want to talk to people about race. I don't want people asking me if my son is circumcised. I don't want them.
Have they asked you that?
Yes, like
Wow.
like
That's just so rude.
and then and then like about vaccines, like, you're not going to get your kids vaccinated, are you? I mean, none of this it's nobody's business. And then like
Yes.
homeschooling, it's just, yes, I think we can talk about these as issues, like on podcasts. Like, yes, we should talk about these and we should have viewpoints on this stuff. But when I'm at a conference, it's really nobody's business. If my
Well,
husband,
it's poor manners. I don't know if in the South, they used to be big on manners, but I can't think of anything more rude to ask someone you don't hardly know a question like that.
right, it's very it's very rude. I don't want to talk about that when I'm at a conference. I just want to talk about what's bringing us together, and that's just the
Right.
fight for our people.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is good. So, uh, yeah, it is interesting how that has. I mean, it is interesting. When I was in high school, the big issue was trying to worry about girls not getting pregnant, but now that's actually is actually dropped, because the kids today don't have as much sex as when I was like in school. Isn't that weird? They don't, and I think a lot of it's because of the internet, social, and all that type of stuff. It's really bizarre in some ways, and that's another theory that's hurting it too.
Yeah, I can't even. I don't even know what. I mean, my kids. Thank goodness, my kids are not teenagers yet, and I don't want them to ever be teenagers. But
Yeah.
like, I can't even relate to teenagers now. I don't even know what's going on with teenagers these days. I don't even. It's so they're so different from even when I was a teenager. It's just so alien to me.
Well, some of them, and I think this is really harmful, and we're kind of different. Is I think all the social media can be very harmful for kids, and kids today. And I'm sounding like an old timer, but they're just constantly focused on their phone. And again, I'm breaking my rule about generational discussions and bashing younger generations, but a lot of younger generation people, they don't have basic social skills because they've been on the internet so much. They don't know how to address a person in person. And I don't know if you've noticed that. So I think this has really kind of warped a lot of people because their whole identity is online. And young women, they get their validation online, so they don't have to get it in real life. And man, they get their sexual outlets either through porn or whatever online, so they don't have to pursue a woman. So it's like there's not the meeting in real life as much anymore with young people, whereas my day you didn't have any choice.
Right. Like even when I was a teenager, yeah, it's like you met somebody in high school or college and you go out to a movie together
Right.
and it's like I remember, I mean, I don't want to make anybody feel bad in the audience who has to go this route because there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the age we're living in. But I remember, gosh, it was considered kind of strange to meet a partner online up until, I guess it was up until maybe, I don't know, it was like maybe 10 years ago, at least from my
Right. And that was the majority, by the way. That's how they
right.
meet. Yeah.
It is, and I don't want anybody to feel bad because it is kind of the way now. But gosh, it was just like even for most of my young life, it seemed like it was kind of a stranger thing to do.
Hmm.
It's just one of those things that's just different now, and I agree. And this is why you said something about the problems with communicating online instead of talking to people in person. This is why I stay away from comment sections in our movement now because it's toxic because
Yes.
it's like everybody's posting anonymously and everybody's meaner to each other.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not, go to a conference and meet somebody in person. I mean, that's more productive.
Yeah, and I've always said people when you meet people in real life, everyone and I meet a lot of people doing what I do, and 99% have been so cool and it's been such a positive experience. There's always an occasional oddball, but it's not what you would think. Because if you looked at online, you would think like, man, everyone's just fucking crazy. You know what I mean? But then in real life, they're a little bit more mellow. I think it is a problem when you're anonymous. Some people are just, they just try to troll. They try to be funny. They insulting. It got so with my YouTube comments, and I don't read them because it just got so negative. I don't really care to, you know, it's just so I encourage people to get together in real life, form communities. That's the important thing. I mean, online, we're online now, so I'm not against it, but you got to take with what people say online, especially anonymous people, with a grain of salt. It doesn't bother me at all. I got really thick skin now because if I don't know someone, what do I care what they say about me? So it doesn't bother me.
And that's a good way to be. I'm female. I wish I could get some thicker skin. In fact, after this show, I'm probably going to be scared to read the comments. But it's like because but you're
Well, don't take it back because I'm sure there's going to be the usual sorts that are going to be. I mean, a lot of people already said they love you, but there's going to be a few. I guarantee it that will
right.
say they hate you for whatever reason because this is online. This is. I think I don't know the psychology about it, but I think some people that's the way they can feel good about themselves by trying to put other people down. I don't get it. I've never been that way, but I think some people are that way. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's and that's another thing I'm learning the older I get, and it's also a Christian way to at on life. To not, it's what Christ taught us.
Mhm.
To don't. I mean, there's a reason he said turn the other cheek. It's not to be a doormat, but it really helps you out more than anybody if you turn your
Right.
cheek because if you don't react to everything and you just understand that the person who hurt you, they're hurting a lot, and
Right.
that's why they're putting you down.
Yeah.
Uh, and I try to. The older I get, it's taken me a long time to get to that point. But
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is a good point. And Courtney, you've been so delightful. We went 20 minutes over, but it's your fault because you're so entertaining. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
I appreciate you having me on. I'm sorry I couldn't be on camera. Everybody, I'm just one of those types. I just can't do it. I'm sorry, but
No, that's fine. Yeah. And when we already, like I said, we already had that photo of you up.
people have to come to events to see me. So.
That's right. See you in person. But yeah, so she does have blonde hair. And is it blue eyes you or green eyes?
Blue eyes.
I thought it was blue, so I got blue eyes. So that's right. So yeah, that's Courtney from Alabama. Very delightful woman. We got to have you on again. And thank you so much. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you. I'm honored that you let me on tonight. I really am. Thank
It's
you.
been a lot of fun. So, guys, I'm back on tomorrow at 11 a.m. with a regular Ramsey Paul show. And next week, we'll have another Happy Homeland. So, talk to you guys later.